Hello and welcome back. This is Dawn with another video for Honeybee Stamps. So today we're going to be creating 3 cards that all use the same color scheme. We're going to be doing a little bit of color play and taking a look at Triadic color palettes. So all of the cards today are going to feature the Bold Backgrounds Vintage Roses die. So this is a great set for creating bold, quick cards. You've got this large pattern of leaves, and then you have your individual flowers that layer up very much like the lovely layers do. And this is actually quite a versatile set. So you could do some ink blending, maybe some distressing, and take this in a very vintage vibe, or you could use it with colored cardstock and create a very bold modern look like we're going to do today. So this back panel here is a large, it covers an A2 card front, and it creates all of the greenery for the roses here. So this is going to cover that entire card front with this beautiful, just leafy pattern. But it also has the silhouettes where each of the flowers, once you put them together, will also go. So this easy design is a great one for us to do some color play with. The design of it's pretty much figured out, although you can mix it up and do other things with it. But if we use it as intended, this is a perfect opportunity to play with color. So here I've chosen a Triadic color palette, and a Triadic color palette is just colors that are evenly spaced apart on the color wheel. So think red, blue, and yellow, your primary colors. That's a Triadic color palette. Here I've gone with purple, yellow, and teal. And you can mix it up by using different tints and shades of any of those hues to either lighten or deepen those colors. So I'm actually going to throw in a lighter tint here of that teal just to mix things up. Now our purple here is a little bit more blue purple than I need it to be. In order to be a true Triadic color palette, I need it to have just a little bit more of that red violet. So I'm going to use some Distress Oxide here in Seedless Preserves, and I'm just going to ink over this Lilac Blossom cardstock. This is going to push it a little bit more red violet, and that's going to be the perfect color for my Triadic color palette. And this is a great tip for stretching your cardstock. If you don't have exactly the right hue that you want, you can always ink blend with your ink to kind of push it in the direction that you want. All right, so once I've got this ink blended, I'm ready to do my die cutting, but I wanted to show you a little comparison here side by side of the original Lilac Blossom. And then once we added that layer of Seedless Preserves over it, you can definitely see it's still purple, but now you can really see that this is more of a red violet, whereas the other is more of a true violet. All right, so now that we've got our color palette picked out, I can go ahead and jump in and start creating the card. We're going to stay true to the intended use of this set, and I've gone ahead and cut that background from the Peacock cardstock, and that's going to be my base layer of my leaves. Now you have 3 unique flowers in the set, and they are just repeated multiple times throughout the pattern. So you have 2 of the large, 3 of the medium, and 3 of the buds. So I'm going to cut all of the pieces for the large one twice. I'm going to cut all the pieces for the medium and the bud 3 times, and then we're going to put these together. And I'm going to walk you through assembling each of these for this first card, and then we will skip that part for the subsequent cards. So like I mentioned, you can include different tints and shades of each color just to add a little more interest. And for that, I'm cutting all of the highlight points, all of the petals that are flipped up or turned over from that Lilac Blossom. Then just to marry them a little bit more with that red violet that I've created, I'm just going to hit just lightly with that color. So we're not going to completely cover it and make it the same color because that would defeat the purpose, but we are going to tint it just ever so slightly so that it marries with that red violet well. Now the large rose has 4 individual dies. So you've got the 3 larger dies here that create the petals, and then all of those little detail petals, the flipped up and flipped over pieces, they're all on one die. So that's great that you don't have to keep track of all them little tiny dies. I really appreciate that feature. We're going to assemble these one on top of the other. This one's really easy to put together. Anything that's not etched, anything that doesn't have any debossed detail in it, usually gets covered by the next layer, so it makes it really easy to tell where everything goes. And then I flipped up some of the petals there for a little bit of movement, a little bit of interest, since this is a relatively simple card. But I think that works in favor of the bold color palette because it keeps it from becoming too busy or too heavy. So we'll just adhere those little flipped petals in place, and then we can add our center. Now both of the centers for these flowers are contained on one die, so you cut them both at the same time. Again, love having those little dies contained on one die so you don't have to keep track of little itty bitty dies. And then we'll just glue that right in the center. and that will complete the large flower. And then I will do one more of those eventually. For now, we're going to put together this medium-sized flower. I wanted to give the next set of petals just a little bit lighter color, so I used a paper pouncer there to just add a little bit of white ink to it. Again, it's not a huge difference, but it is a little bit of difference, and it helps to separate those petals. So this one has 3 main dies and then your center there. And that will finish off our medium one. And again, I'll put together 2 more of these to complete this entire design. And then for our bud, you just have this extra little calyx, the calyx that comes up around the rose, and we'll adhere that on top, and then again, cut 2 more of those. Once all of those are done, we can just adhere these to the background. Again, that silhouette is in there, so it's really easy to tell where each piece goes. And that really completes the bulk of this design. I think that the design is, the die, wow. The die is designed so well that you really don't have to do much else if you don't want to. I'm going to adhere this to a card base. I've cut that lighter tint of that teal, which this is the waterfall. And we're going to add a little bit of liquid adhesive to the back and adhere that in place. I just worry about getting the main portions, and then any free hanging pieces, I make sure that those are adhered very well. And then liquid adhesive is a must, especially if you're adhering this straight to your card base. It'll give you a little bit of time to wiggle that right into place. All right, the only thing left for this is our sentiment and some embellishments. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our next card. Now, I wanted to brighten things up considerably, but still keeping with that Triadic color palette. So I swapped out that darker shade of teal for a lighter tint of it. So here I just brightened up that teal, and the color on this is more true than in the photos. The photos I could not get the true, this is definitely more of a green, blue-green than they're photographing. So it is definitely more on the greener side. So you'll also notice that I decided to swap the color of the flowers. So this time I went with yellow flowers with a purple center, and I thought that that would complement that teal and keep things super bright, and I love that. I also swapped the details between the large and the medium flowers. So I did a mostly darker yellow flower with the brighter yellow details on the large rose, and then for the medium one, I went with the brighter yellow with the darker yellow detail. So I think that slight variation really makes a huge difference and adds a little bit of interest, and I love the overall brightness of this. But I was still missing something. So I decided to continue playing with this color palette, and I thought, what if I use the leftover flowers that I have, I put them together, and I add a lot of white space. You guys know I love me some white space, and it really helps to make the design pop. So I cut another one of those backgrounds from that waterfall, and now we are going to cut it up. So we're going to use bits and pieces of those leaves to create our own pattern with this background here so that it takes up less real estate. So here I'm going to glue one of these into place, and then I'm going to strategically trim it out of our background here so that we retain like the stem and some of the leaves. And this is going to allow me to create my own little custom floral arrangement. Again, this is just another great way to stretch this die because you don't have to use it in its entirety. You have the separate flowers, so you can use those, and you could use them with other leaves in your stash, or you can do what I'm doing here and just cutting up that background and only using the pieces that you want to use. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. Originally, I thought I was just going to do like a little free-form bouquet here with some leaves, but as it progressed, it really, things just changed. It happens a lot with me. Again, I think I've mentioned I never have a hard, concise plan going into creating a card. I just kind of start and see where it goes. So when I'm cutting pieces from them, I'm looking for areas that I can get a clean cut. So I don't have any weird cutoffs. So anywhere that it maybe looks like it's going behind the flower there, that's a good cut point. And then anywhere where I have any free-standing leaves, I can use those, cut those off and use those. So again, this is more of it's more freeform, but it's definitely, it's fun. It's a lot of fun because there's no rules. There's no, this is how you have to do it. So to me, those are always the best. Like I could have stopped right here. That looks cute. I added this little leaf here. I could have stopped right there, added my sentiment and been done. But as I kept adding stuff, you'll notice that this will start to take on another, somehow I ended up creating a square. I didn't mean to. I'm cutting bits and pieces from this rectangle, but somehow I still ended up with a very square arrangement. And at first I was disappointed. I was like, oh, girl, how'd you do that? But as it kept coming together, I was like, wait a minute, I kind of love this. I kind of love the way it created a perfect little square, and it looked very intentional, even though I didn't try to do that. It wasn't the plan, as are most of my cards. They never go according to plan because they never have a plan. So here you can see it's starting to take that square shape. And as I kept cutting free edges and free pieces to kind of tuck in there, it just kept creating a square. So here I was like, you know what? I like this piece better. So we're going to rip off the piece that I had already glued together, and we're going to change this out. And this is where I finally said, you know what? Yep, this is what I want. This is how I want it to look. So I swapped out that one piece and re-adhered that rose in place, and then it was time to go ahead and pick this all up with the press and seal. Yep, good old press and seal. I've got everything where I need it, so I can just lay this right over top, press it into place, and now I can pick up the entire arrangement as one, and I can mess around with the placement. I can try it in different positions or different angles. I can even try it on different colored cardstock, but I am a sucker for a clean and simple card with lots of white space, so that is ultimately what I decided to do. To do my adhering, as usual, I'm going to use a mix of liquid adhesive and foam adhesive. So for all of the bottommost layers, I'm just going to use the liquid adhesive to adhere those down. I'll fold that over, press it into place, give it a second or two to adhere, and then I will just pull back that press and seal, and everything that isn't glued down will come back up with the press and seal. And for the flowers, I'm going to use some foam adhesive just to give them a little bit of pop. And for that, I'm going to use my favorite, the Honeybee thin foam strips, I think they're called. They'll be linked in the description box below. This is hands down my most used craft foam in my craft room. I buy it 5 packs at a time, would not be caught without it. So yeah, my favorite. Highly recommend. All right, now that we've got this adhered, it's time to work on the sentiment. I grabbed the Blessings of Spring. I really liked the mix of the script and the sans serif font here. Perfect, perfect modern sentiments for this vibe that we've got going on. So I went ahead and put that in my MISC. I'm going to stamp that in some black. I love that hard contrast of that black with all of that white and then those bold colors. Absolutely stunning. And I used that same set to stamp out some sentiment options here for my second card. This time I white heat embossed it on that waterfall cardstock, and then I'm using the coordinating dies to cut them out. Now that pretty much finishes up the cards. Let's go ahead and review all of them. So here they are all together, all with that same Triadic color palette, and I absolutely love how they turned out. So for this first card, I used the mini messages, stamp and die for our sentiment, and this one is a little bit heavy. I do love this color combo, but for my own personal taste, brightening up that teal, so using just a lighter tint of that teal color and then swapping those flowers to the yellow really made a huge difference. And then when I added in that white heat embossed sentiment, I realized what this was missing for me was that white, somewhere for the eye to rest. So for this third card, I incorporated more of that white. And again, this is all personal preference and personal taste. But for me, I really love having all of that nice, clean white space, something to really draw the eye into all of the color, which is isolated right there in the middle. And then that bold, crisp black sentiment really grounds it all. And it adds that other end of the spectrum when it comes to contrast. So you have the white and the black, and it really just makes all of the tones of the colors really pop. So I hope you enjoyed this look at this Triadic color palette and all of the different ways to kind of change it up and incorporate it into your designs. And if you'd like to see more of this color play with some different color palettes, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss any future videos. And if you're looking for any of the products that I used in today's video, you can find them in the description box below. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.